A Messenger of Truth is a channel that we've looked at a few times over here at SciManDan. He likes to come up with videos defending creation and often thinking he's debunked evolution. He has of course never done that. But recently he made a video entitled 5 Scientific Proofs Debunking Atheism, and I couldn't resist. Hello all and welcome along to another video with me, SciManDan. Thank you very much for joining me. Now, before we get into the bulk of A Messenger of Truth's video, he started out by claiming that apparently atheists already know that God exists. Which is funny because the very term atheism means a lack of a belief in a god or gods. And he even went as far as saying this.
And of course nothing good comes out of atheism, something that is objectively wrong.
That right there is possibly one of the worst takes of all time. Ricky Gervais is an atheist, yet he's donated almost £2 million to worldwide animal charities. Alan Turing, the father of the computer, was an atheist. You are literally using his invention. But I guess that's not good, hey? I would never dream of making such a naive generalisation as that. Awful, just awful. Right, now I've got that off my chest, let's get on with his 5 scientific proofs that apparently debunk atheism. Here we go.
Starting off at number 5 is our observation and experimentation of genetics. Basically, genes contain the information, the instructions for the cells in your body to create certain things. The information within the DNA tells the cells how to act. Now, this is something that is well studied and everybody agrees upon it because, you know, it's real science rather than coming up with stories about the past. We know that genes contain information, and what do we observe about information in every other area of life? Well, it goes back to a mind.
DNA does contain information, yes, of course. It tells cells how to build proteins. But this isn't mind-written information like a book or text. It's chemical structure, molecules following the laws of chemistry and physics. The rings of trees contain information about that tree, but it doesn't mean it was put there by a mind.
I have this Greek textbook, and you know what this contains? This contains information to be passed on, okay? Now understand this. This book right here is not a mind. This is something that contains information. So it's not like we're saying that DNA is a mind and it has information and it's actually consciously telling the cells in your body to do certain things. Now, there's obviously tons of AI out there that copy and send information, but they aren't the origin of information. You have to program these things to mimic human speech and behavior. Again, this is observed, testable, and repeatable in the present. We have seen this. If there is a piece of information out there, its source is a rational mind.
Yes, your Greek textbook contains information, but that was written by a mind. That's not in dispute. Not all information comes from a mind, as we've already seen. Sometimes it comes from natural laws. Stop confusing books with biology.
Does it really make any sense for me to look at this Greek textbook and suppose that it came about through random chance, you know, the ink came to the paper and just formed this Greek textbook? No, that is not reasonable. There is nothing like that in the created order. Now, atheists have their responses to this, as well as the next 3, and this isn't the greatest proof, because the atheist can always pull out what we would call an atheist of the gaps argument. Oh, science will figure this out someday.
No, this isn't an atheist of the gaps argument. We're not saying we don't know, so science will fix it one day. We do know. We've seen new genetic information emerge through mutation and selection. We've watched bacteria evolve new functions in real time. We've got models and experiments, not just guesses. The real gap here is in your logic. You're filling it with a god because you don't understand how nature works.
There doesn't have to be a god out there who is the ultimate source of the information in DNA. They can always just push it to the side and say, oh, science will figure that out sometime. We have a bunch of other theories that can account for this. And obviously by theories, they mean stories that could account for this, stuff that they just make up. And honestly, even I myself, I'm not commonly going to use this argument because there's some problems with it. If we are ultimately relying on our own senses and what we believe to be design and information, the only way that we can come to certain knowledge about that is if we ourselves are omniscient, okay?
Okay, great. So your first scientific proof that debunks atheism is just you not understanding that information doesn't have to be created by a mind. Awesome work. Let's move on, shall we?
On to number 4. For this one, I'm going to take some help from Charles Darwin himself, the famous God-hating atheist who came up with the story, not theory, of evolution. I have a video from a few months ago where I explain why evolution, literally on its own terms, cannot be called a theory, because it is impossible to test and observe and prove scientifically. Even if the story of evolution is true, you know, that we used to be fish, our ancestors, you know, gradually evolved over millions of years, that's its story, and even if it's true, you can't scientifically prove that.
First of all, Darwin wasn't an atheist. He struggled with faith, yes, but he never described himself as a God hater. That's just emotional fluff. Second, evolution is a scientific theory. That means it's a well-substantiated explanation supported by a mountain of evidence, from genetics, fossils, biogeography, and observable experiments.
Based on Darwin's theory, that is. Anyways, this is what he said. To suppose that the eye, with all its inimitable contrivances for adjusting the focus to different distances, for admitting different amounts of light, and for the correction of spherical and chromatic aberration, could have been formed by natural selection, seems, I freely confess, absurd in the highest degree. Yes, I agree, seems absurd.
Quote mining alert! Quote mining alert! Auga! Auga! Sorry, this one annoys me because he selected a Darwin quote, read a bit of it, and then stopped. Darwin goes on to say after that quote, yet reason tells me that if numerous graduations from a perfect and complex eye to one very imperfect and simple, each grade being useful to its possessor, can be shown to exist, if further, the eye does vary ever so slightly and the variations be inherited, which is certainly the case, and if any variation or modification in the organ be ever useful to an animal under changing conditions of life, then the difficulty of believing that a perfect and complex eye could be formed by natural selection, though insuperable by our imagination, can hardly be considered real. And guess what? We have those graduations. We found eyes of all complexity levels in nature, proving that they could evolve step by step. So no, Darwin didn't say it was absurd, he said it seemed absurd, until you actually study it, which he did, and so have we. Don't quote Darwin unless you've read him.
Because it is absurd. Again, that kind of goes back to number 5. Like, do we really think that this book came about on its own? That's what the theory of evolution says. Something that's way more complex than that book came about on its own. But specifically for number 4, this is what we call irreducible complexity. We're using the eye for the example on this one. Here's a diagram of the eye. Pupil, iris, lens, retina, the optic nerves. You have all these different parts, and what the evolutionists literally cannot even begin to explain is which one of these possibly evolved first. Like, the eye cannot work with one of these missing.
He's saying that evolutionists can't even begin to explain how the eye evolved, except that's exactly what we've done for decades. We've found living examples of every step of eye evolution, from simple light-sensitive cells in flatworms to full-blown camera eyes in humans and squids. So light-sensitive cells are already useful. It tells you whether it's day or night. Then there are eye cups, which help tell you the direction of light. Then pinhole eyes, which improve accuracy. And then lens eyes, which enhance focus and image clarity. Every single stage is functional and beneficial on its own. There's no need for a fully established eyeball to just pop into existence. If you think that the eye is too complex to evolve, that's not a flaw in evolution. That's a gap in your knowledge. And even if irreducible complexity was a problem for evolution, which it isn't, that wouldn't automatically prove that God exists. Irreducible complexity does not debunk atheism. It just shows that some people would rather say that God did it than actually do the science. Let's move on to his next point. I've had enough of irreducible complexity already.
Now, moving on to number 3, you can actually see this one with a good pair of binoculars or a telescope. The planet Saturn in our solar system. This is from Wikipedia, but its ring system. Saturn has the most extensive and complex ring system of any planet in the solar system. The rings consist of particles in orbit around the planet made almost entirely of water ice, with a trace component of rocky material. I'm just going to be focusing on Saturn for this video, but when it comes to every planet in our solar system, you can point out something about it that the atheists don't really have a good answer for.
I don't think you can. Also, you've selected something in Saturn's rings that is between 100 and 400 million years old. How old is your version of the Earth again?
Now, according to the atheist, universe is 13 billion years old. That's a made-up number, of course, and as science progresses and we get more real data from the real world we live in, they keep pushing that number further back and back. And they say that our solar system is about 4.5 billion years old, and so Saturn's out there with this ring system made mostly of ice. And there's this thing in our solar system called the sun, and it's constantly giving off UV light radiation. And again, the stuff that I'm telling you here, it's not debatable. It's just how we're interpreting the facts and the evidence that we see in the observable universe.
Please don't tell me that he's going to say the sun should have melted Saturn's rings by now. I feel like he's setting that up.
So basically, 4.5 billion years, why is there still this super bright, icy, and reflective ring system that Saturn has? There's a bunch of other things that could impact Saturn's rings as well over millions, billions of years. So essentially, it's estimated that the ring system of Saturn can only last up to 100 million years or so. And yeah, sure, that's a long time, but still way less than 4.5 billion years.
Yes, because the ring system only formed between 100 and 400 million years ago, not 4.5 billion years ago. Most likely caused by comets or small moons ripped apart by the planet's gravity.
The simple biblical answer to this is that, well, Saturn, just like the rest of the stars, and biblically speaking, a star is just something that is out there in space and it's a light in the sky. That's what a star is, biblically speaking. So when we're speaking scientifically today, we don't refer to the planets as stars. Just understand that. But based on the biblical terminology, we know that Saturn was made on day 4. Let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And, it was so. And there was evening and morning, a 4th day. Saturn is about 6,000 years old, just like the rest of the universe. God designed Saturn to be that way and to be beautiful from the human eye.
I'm going to stop you right there again. This, unfortunately, is not a scientific reason for debunking atheism, because you're using the Bible again. I'm afraid your third one has also failed. Best move on again, shall we?
Now, moving on to number 2, sticking with the solar system, comets. The existence of comets, atheists cannot explain coherently, that is.
Another silly statement to make. Of course comets are explainable. I just can't believe the front of this guy.
Comets are icy, dusty, and rocky bodies that orbit the sun, often exhibiting a bright glowing tail as they approach the sun due to the vaporization of ice and dust, and are considered remnants from the early solar system. And basically, it's a similar issue with the comets, this icy material orbiting close to the sun. How long is that going to last? Well, not billions of years is the answer. And again, this isn't something that's debatable. Atheistic scientists will agree with this analysis. They're not going to last longer than 100,000 years or so.
Totally agree, actually. We've known for decades that the solar system has a reservoir of comets in the Kuiper Belt and the Oort cloud. These are like deep space storage units filled with icy bodies. That sounded a bit morbid, didn't it? Gravitational nudges from nearby stars or planets sometimes knock one of these comets out of the Kuiper Belt or Oort cloud, sending them barreling into the inner solar system and a fresh new comet for all of us to see. Problem solved.
With the technology we have today, we've been able to measure the size of comets, and as they orbit the sun, they lose some mass. And of course, if it goes around again and again and again, it's going to cease to be.
What I find ironic about this list is you're using science to confirm the existence of these objects, but then ignoring the same science that tells you the age of these objects. It's quite amusing, really. Again, this argument doesn't debunk atheism. All it does is show that you like to cherry pick scientific data. His last argument then is apparently science itself debunking atheism. This one should be good.
Now, the number one scientific proof against atheism is the existence of science itself. Science disproves atheism. The concept of science itself disproves atheism. You see, science depends on this thing we call the uniformity of nature. That is, nature, that is the world that we live in, is uniform. That is the same. An example of this is gravity, the warping of space and time, not necessarily a force, but that's irrelevant. All we have to do as Christians to point out the atheists' inconsistencies is ask them why they don't think that gravity is all of a sudden going to stop working, because according to them, we live in a chance universe, random universe. There is no creator who is upholding the world by his very power and consistent nature. Ask them this, and this is a very honest question. It's not aimed to trap them in this, oh, we're better than you atheists. No, genuinely try to answer this question. The fact is they can't. So,
alright, let's unpack this. He says science relies on the uniformity of nature. Things like gravity working consistently. And then asks, why do atheists trust that gravity just won't stop working tomorrow? Easy. because science is based on observation, testing and evidence, not blind faith. Gravity has behaved the same way billions of times. We build models from those observations, and we adjust those models when new data comes in. That's not faith, that's reliability through repetition. We don't assume the universe is random, we test to see if it's random. But you don't need a deity to explain that, just natural laws and enough time. Look, I've had enough here now. Science doesn't disprove atheism, and it doesn't prove your religion either. It just follows the evidence, wherever it leads. And I think to claim that you have scientific proofs that debunk atheism is, in my opinion, grossly arrogant. If your best argument is, you can't explain gravity without my religion, maybe it's not atheism that's in trouble. Perhaps it's your theology that's run out of answers. Well, there we go everyone. What did we think of a Messenger of Truth's video there and his reasoning? Did you like it? Let me know in the comments below either way. As I say, we're all done and dusted for another video. Thanks so much for watching today. If you enjoyed it, please do consider subscribing to the channel, hitting the thumbs up button too. Remember, on daily videos now, I do not want you to miss one. I've been Simon Dan. Have yourselves a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow for the return of CC. You knew he was going to make an appearance again. I'll see you then.